Hey everybody, this is Yoritomo, and I am finally coming back to you with the last installment of the weapons videos. So this one is on the supports. You can go back and take a look at the other videos that I've made if you want to see the fighters or the hunters or the cannoners. But this one's about the supports. So we'll start this one the way that we've started the other ones, with the common weapons. Now again, I want to remind everyone it is absolutely worthless to upgrade these in any way, shape, or form. So it's just a waste of resources to do that. So let's start with these. Now the 45 Claw here, the Coke cans, uh, cleanses one random debuff and restores 20 energy to a random ally. It might be a little helpful, but it doesn't do much. The best thing about it is that it's fast. The next two I see as being fairly similar. So the first one casts shields on the most damage friendly agent with a value of 5% of his current hit points. And the next one heals the most damage friendly agent for a value equal to 300% of his DPS and increases his armor by 30% for 10 seconds. So the first one is probably a little more hit points that it blocks. This one does a little more of the armor, but basically they're both kind of like a heal for roughly the same amount. They're both, well, actually the Cat Volver is a little slower, so the Beret Bobcat may actually be the better option because it's faster. The last one that's a common is this Suppressor, and it'll silence an enemy hero for 5 seconds and reduce his healing by 75% for 3 seconds. So if you're really having an issue early in the game with an enemy tank, this one might be worthwhile. Now we're getting into the rare weapons. So the first one is the Desert Kitty, and this one fears the closest enemy hero for 3 seconds and burns 30 energy from him. So now moving up, if you're having issues with like a Shelly jumping into your team, this will fear him, make him back up, and make him a little easier to work with. It's also nice in the fact that it doesn't go by the DPS or the hit points of your cat. Because the ones that are healing or shielding for a certain amount of DPS or hit points, oftentimes these are on cats that are under leveled. Your tank may be a level 5, but your support's only a level 3, or your tank is a level 8, but your support's a 5 or a 6. In which case, you're barely going to do anything for that tank. So that's something to keep in mind. Any of these DPS or hit point heals or shields, they really need to be on a cat that's at least within 1 star level of your tank. Otherwise, it's negligible and really not usable at all. The next one I really like. So it casts shields on the most damage friendly agent with a value of 8% of the wielder's max HP, which is nice. It's a bit more than the 5%. And it also makes the target immune to CC effects for 4 seconds, so stun, fear, freeze, everything. So that's actually pretty nice. Even if your support is a bit under leveled, you still have this CC block. So that makes it kind of nice. It's going to be on your tank, so your tank will be able to keep going. The next one is my favorite of the rares. Wielder cleanses all debuffs from a friendly agent with the most debuffs, so completely cleans the debuffs, and heals him for a value equal to 600% of his DPS. That right there is the best heal of all of the weapons, 600% DPS. And it cleanses those debuffs. So it really, especially if say you're doing a boss battle and it's a single target boss and it's targeting your tank, obviously, So this allows you to keep healing that one target and cleansing him. So if they're hitting him with fire, like a burn or poison or whatever, this actually works pretty well. And I've had instances where this is the best weapon to use, even barring all of the epics. It's better than the epics in some instances. So that's something to keep in mind. I would keep one of these available for those instances where you really do need that heal and cleanse for a single target. The next one, this Glockenspiel, wielder deals damage equal to 50% of DPS. Right there I stop and say, you've got your support doing damage? Yeah, damage bonuses on a support weapon doesn't make sense at all. And then having their healing recede reduced by 25%? This, yeah. I would say the commons are better than the Glockenspiel. This one's just garbage. So now when we get into the epic weapons. So this is one of those cases where all of these weapons are very good in certain circumstances. So the first one, this G-Clock 17. So it targets the ally agent with the highest DPS and increases his attack speed for 20% for 10 seconds. So the nice thing about this is that you always know what your target is. It doesn't matter if you're going up against a boss that's targeting your back line, so you don't know what's happening. This always goes to the cat with the highest DPS, and you can control who that is. Additionally, the target receives a buff for 10 seconds. While affected by this buff, the basic attack has a 50% chance to freeze his target for 2 seconds. So that's kind of nice as well. But mainly this attack speed buff by 20% for 10 seconds on your specific cat. You know who it's going to be. So I really like that. It's not as strong as the buff that you get from Catheter, but you know where it's going. So this Furry Wuzzy. So this is generally considered the best of the epics. And you can see why here. The wielder heals 2 most damage friendly agents for a value equal to 400% of his DPS. Additionally, he increases DPS of both allies by 50% and their critical hit chance by 10%, both for 5 seconds. So you're giving a huge boost. And it doesn't matter if this is on a 4-star cat or a 10-star cat. Well, I guess it does because he's giving this heal. So that was wrong. He does need to be close to the star value of your other ones, but it's not necessary for this down here, which really is the biggest thing, that DPS boost for both allies. So where this gets a little interesting is, again, in a boss battle. So you've got your tank up front, and he's taking the most damage. If nobody else is taking damage, I don't know where the other bonus is landing. So you may have a couple DPSs that you really want this boost. You've got an Oscar or a Solid or a Pergy or something like that you really need this boost on, but they aren't taking damage, and so this boost never hits them. So that's why in some cases this G-Clock 17 can be better. Now, one thing that I do oftentimes in a boss battle is have Oscar tank, and in which case Oscar is getting this DPS boost and the heal and everything. So it just depends on how your team is set up. Sometimes this doesn't hit the cat that you want it to. Sometimes it does, and it really depends on how you have your cats placed and where they are. The next one, the Vaccination gun, wielder buffs his whole team with 20% damage reduction and 50% CC resistance, both for 6 seconds. So the CC resistance, I mean, there's a lot of Wonka teams out there, a lot of silence, stun. So anything that you can do to reduce the stun and the silence happening to your team is really going to help your team. Now, I've heard people that are using this don't find it as good as it sounds. I don't know. I don't actually have one. Sounds like it could be pretty powerful, but I can't really tell you because I don't have one personally. The last one, the Purificator. So Wielder dispels all buffs from 2 most buffed enemies and applies debuff on them that prevents receiving of new buffs for 6 seconds. So this is the anti-Silius weapon. Mainly for PvP, there's a lot of Silius in PvP, and the way he works is that he will put fire burn on an enemy that he's targeting, and once those burns are stacked, then he'll put a stack of buffs on himself, and once both the buffs on the debuffs and the buffs are up at their maximum, he does a massive amount of damage. So if you can keep him from creating his buffs on himself, he's not going to drop his huge nuke. That's really the main reason for this, is to go up against Silius. Silius is all over the arena, so if you want to be able to keep him from targeting your team, you use this weapon, or you use a Doctor. Doctor can also help with that as well, because Doctor cleans off those debuffs if there's 4 unique debuffs, and oftentimes there are. So either Doctor or Purificator is needed to keep Silius from nuking your team. So that's kind of my overview. Again, I want to take a look at this here. So the Furry Wuzzy does 400% healing to 2 of your friendly agents. If we come back up here, you can see the Mouser is 600% for 1. So again, you can see how the Mouser can be better than even some of the epics if you're only trying to keep your tank alive. Its speed is fast, and so you're going to have the same speed as the fastest of the epics. Keep that in mind. There's a rare weapon that is very, very good. And the litter cleaner, not quite as good, but it's kind of like the vaccination. So it's a kind of a baby vaccination. So that is my overview of these weapons. Let's take a look at what I am running on my cats. So you can see I've got 2 of the Furry Wuzzies. They are very powerful. Really like that weapon. And if you ask pretty much anyone in the Discord which is the best of the support weapons, they're going to say it's this one. I also have the G-Clock 17, and that one you can get from the arena shop. So it is very good as well. I tend to build my teams around boss damage, and I run a lot of supports when I do boss damage. So having all 3 of those is good. And then I also have actually several copies of the Mouser, because it is a very good weapon as well. I've told you why I like it. And then I put the litter cleaner on my Roxanne because I really like to have that block of those CC effects. So Roxanne's generally for my main missions and everything else. So he's going to keep my team going a little longer. They aren't going to be stunned or silenced as much as normal or feared. So that's my overview. Let me know if you have anything that you disagree with, agree with, whatever. I always like comments from you. Also, subscribe and like is great. Everyone be safe. Yoritomo out.